We are going to start the revision series of our CVS physiology, that is cardiac physiology, from our guide 10. So first let us start with the cardiac action potentials revision. So now actually the cardiac action potentials are divided mainly into two types. You can see the types of action potentials generated in the heart. The first one is a SA node generated action potential, and the second one is a ventricular action potential. Why we are separating this is, SA node is a pacemaker of a heart, so its action potential is differing from our ventricle. So let us see how they differ. So first, SA node, it's known as it is also called as pacemaker of a heart. Why it is called pacemaker? Because it can form its own stimulus without any external stimulus, and that is, it can form its own action potential. So this is mainly concerned with generation of heart rate. So you can understand SA node is always related to produce a heart rate. So heart rate, it is related with the term known as chronotropy, right? So positive chronotropic agents are mainly by our sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate, so these are also called as positive chronotropic agents. And the negative chronotropic agents are, of course, our parasympathetic nervous system, which decrease the heart rate. So the sympathetic nervous system increase the heart rate, so called as positive chronotropic agents, and the negative chronotropic agents are parasympathetic nervous system, which decreases the heart rate. So we are talking about a heart rate which is related to the SA node. So SA node has restless membrane potential. So that's what it is differing from the normal skeletal muscle. We can understand in a skeletal muscle there is resting membrane potential, but here restless means without any rest it is continuously working. So its values are oscillating or fluctuating between the values like minus 60 millivolts and minus 40 millivolts. In our skeletal muscle, the resting membrane potential is about like minus 90 millivolts, but here you can see it's like just minus 60 millivolts, and also it is minus 40 millivolts. So it gets fluctuated in this between these values. We'll see how the action potential is continuous in a SA node. So next, coming to the ventricular action potential. So ventricular action potential is mainly concerned with contractility of a heart. So ventricle means, its main function is like contraction, so it should form a cardiac output, so it should contract, so it is related to the contractility. And the word which is related to the contractility of the heart is nothing but inotropy. So the ventricles have resting membrane potential, whereas SA node has restless membrane potential, because ventricle is like not a pacemaker, it is just a normal cardiac muscle cell. So they have the resting membrane potential of minus 90. So this is the difference, basic difference. First we need to understand the different types of action potentials in SA node and ventricle. So after completing this, we will move on to our SA nodal potential, which is very important in the case of our pacemaker. So first, phase 4. So we'll come from phase 4, and later we'll understand why we are talking about back. So first, phase 4. Phase 4 is nothing but the pre-potential phase. Pre-potential phase is nothing but like threshold. You can see the word pre-potential means before the potential, that is action potential, is formed. So the pre-potential phase is phase 4 represents the restless membrane potential, which is oscillating between the values of minus 60 and minus 40. So this pre-potential phase is nothing but the restless membrane potential. So you can see this is a restless membrane potential. We will talk about that later. First we'll complete this. So this occurs before the generation of action potential. Yeah, that's what its name is, pre-potential phase. And which cause means what are the causes for this pre-potential phase is mainly the transient calcium current. Transient calcium current means the calcium, calcium is mainly produced to our cardiac muscle by two types, like by transient currents, like uh, by it will come inside the cell very fast, and also it will go outside the cell very fast, so hence it is called as transient. And one more type of calcium is like it will come and stay for a long time, so we are not discussing about that. We are discussing about the transient calcium current, which comes faster and also goes faster from the cell. This is known as transient calcium current. So this transient calcium current mainly causes a phase 4, and the calcium ions influx via T type of calcium channel. So by T type of calcium channel, the calcium which goes into the cell, this causes the pre-potential phase. That is the phase which is taking place before the action potential takes place. This is called as phase 4. And next, coming to the funny channels. Funny channels, that is due to sodium influx, special type of funny current, sodium influx. Here what are the things taking place is decrease in potassium, So next cause is third one is decrease in potassium efflux. So hence it is called restless membrane potential. You can understand whenever there is potassium efflux going on, there is process of repolarization taking place. So uh, whenever potassium efflux takes place, you can understand a lot of positive charge is going outside, so cell becomes again negative. So here decrease, they are saying decrease in potassium efflux. When decrease in potassium efflux means more positive charge is getting accumulated inside the cell. If the more positive charge is getting accumulated inside the cell means again the cell is now ready for the next action potential, that is now again it is moving towards the prepotential phase or next into the threshold phase. So this is what we need to understand, that is why it is called as restless membrane potential. So once again let us review it quickly. The SI nodal potential, mainly it has three major steps in it. The first one is phase 4, that is pre-potential phase, where this represents the restless membrane potential, mainly oscillating values between -60 and -40. And this occurs before the generation of action potential, hence called as prepotential phase. And the cause why this prepotential phase is taking place, because there is transient calcium current, that is calcium is coming quickly and also going out quickly. So calcium influx via T-type calcium channel, that is very important. Because of T-type calcium influx and outflux, this prepotential phase is formed. And next the funny currents. Funny currents is due to sodium influx. You know, as sodium influx takes place, depolarization takes place. So that is the funny currents. And next the decrease in potassium efflux. As potassium efflux is decreasing, now the cell is again getting ready to the next action potential, that is it is now becoming restless. So these are the three important points we need to discuss in a SA node potential. And now let us see phase 0. So phase 0, it is a depolarization phase, and that is firing level. Yeah, phase 0 is a depolarization phase. You know, this is exactly the depolarization. Firing level is also like threshold potential, right? The action potential is fired when that is -40 millivolts is reached. So remember, in skeletal muscle, the threshold should be -55, right? Yeah, but here it is -40. So that is the difference between SA node and skeletal muscle. In skeletal muscle our threshold is -55, but here the firing level of the threshold is -40. And this, what is causing this? Long lasting calcium current. So very important. You know, in our skeletal muscle mainly sodium causes this depolarization, but here mainly the calcium, that too L type of calcium. L type of calcium means long lasting calcium current. So the long lasting calcium current is causing the depolarization in the case of our SA node, and this calcium influx via L type of calcium channels. And it's coming to phase 3. Phase 3, you know, it's normal repolarization phase, that is due to potassium efflux. The causes, of course, potassium efflux. It is a universal cause of repolarization. So which kind of cell, what kind of cell? The universal cause of repolarization in any kind of cell is mainly due to the potassium efflux. So this is a fixed point. We don't need to confuse about this. Whenever the potassium efflux, that is mainly, you can understand, repolarization in any kind of cell. Whereas in the case of our depolarization only it is varying. You can see in our SNO now the depolarization is due to L type of calcium channels, and the prepotential is due to T type of calcium channels. So that you need to remember there T type of calcium channel and here L type of calcium channel. And now funny currents. So funny currents are also called as HCN channels. This is also another name. HCN channels means hyperpolarization cyclic nucleotide. Hyperpolarization cyclic nucleotide. That is a funny current channel. So they are special type of sodium currents. The location and function, they are like you know, in eye, they help in visual function, and also in a heart they help in generating the sinus rhythm. So these are the functions of our funny sodium channels. That is due to this sodium influx, it improves our visual function in eye, and in heart it leads to formation of sinus rhythms. That is about our funny sodium channels. And if blockers, yeah, if we use the funny current blockers, then what happens? Let us see. So the action is mainly forming bradycardia. So you can understand, if you are giving this funny current, I mean sodium influx is blocked and sodium is not coming inside, you can understand the heart rate is decreased, or bradycardia. Bradycardia means slow beating. So example, you can use ivabradine. It is used to treat the erythema. Erythema, you know, whenever heartbeats are prolonged or very, can say, fast heartbeats. So whenever you can find this very fast heartbeats, we give the treatment ivabradine. Ivabradine is used to treat the erythema. And here there is also a side effect, you can understand, of course, because This funny current channels are also present in eye as well, right? So if you use this for the heart, even eye also get affected, and the visual decrease in visual activity, because even their funny currents are present, right? Funny sodium channels, even there the influx is decrease of sodium, so it calls to some visual activity defects in the case of side effects of eva bradine. Now let us see the effect of autonomic nervous system on SA node potential. So here you can see, if we give drug A, this is the situation in the drug B. What are this drug A, drug B? Let us see. So drug A is mainly from sympathetic nervous system, especially norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, you know, it affects the phase 4. So what is that phase 4? That is a prepotential phase. So if it affects the prepotential phase, then increase in the slope of prepotential, yes. Because sympathetic you can understand, it is having higher activity, like it is having stimulatory activity on a or heart, so it increases the slope of prepotential, and of course this leads to increase in heart rate. Whereas drug B is a parasympathetic nervous system drug, that is acetylcholine. It releases acetylcholine. It also affects the phase 4, but here it decreases the slope of prepotential, because as you remember, S means stress. In stressful conditions it is released, so it increases the heart rate. Parasympathetic means peaceful conditions. In peaceful conditions you can understand, you are relaxed, so your heart rate also decreases. So this is what we need to understand, and remember that our autonomic nervous system is acting on phase 4 of our SA nodal potential, where it may increase or decrease the prepotential slopes. So now we'll come to another part. So here we are. So now let us see the ventricular action potential. So that's it about our SA node action potential. Now the ventricular action potential, here we have phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, same like our SA node, but what are the differences? Let us compare. So in phase 0 there is early depolarization, and it's due to sodium influx like skeletal muscle, and phase 1 early repolarization due to potassium influx, same like skeletal muscle. Phase 2 plateau phase, yeah, this is different from skeletal muscle, right? So plateau phase is mainly due to cause of potassium efflux and calcium influx. You can understand, equal amount of positive charges are coming inside and equal amount of positive charges are going outside, so it just forms like a plateau. You can see here, this is a plateau, this is a phase 2, and phase 1 is depolarization. Phase 0 is early depolarization, phase 1 is early depolarization, and phase 2 is plateau phase. So next, that too, remember that here in plateau phase also, that is L type of calcium influx going on, that we need to remember. And calcium L type channel closes at the end of phase 2, of course. If it closes, you can understand now, potassium influx is more, it leads to late repolarization. So remember, in ventricular we have both early repolarization and also late repolarization. So phase 3 is a late repolarization. The cause is due to potassium influx continues after the calcium channel even closes, right? So next, phase 4. Phase 4 attains the resting membrane potential. The cause is due to, of course, sodium efflux and potassium influx by sodium potassium pump. It takes 3 sodium out and 2 potassium in, so that's the reason it is causing again back to the resting membrane potential. So now let us compare the ventricular action potential and SA node potential. So you can see the ventricular action potential here at the resting membrane potential is seen in phase 4, even same in SA node, but here it is restless membrane potential in SA node, and depolarization at phase 0, of course, even here SA node also phase 0 depolarization, and repolarization at phase 3 in a ventricular action potential, and even in SA node repolarization is at phase 3. Now let us see the conducting system of heart. So conducting, if the word conducting comes, it refers to dromotropy, the property of conduction of impulses. So now let us see the components. Of course, SA node is a dominant pacemaker of a heart because of highest rate of impulse generation. Of course, when compared with all pacemakers, we have many pacemakers in our body, but the dominant one among all is our SA node. So SA node firing rate is about like 100 per minute, is having fastest firing rate, and the heart rate is 72. So you may wonder that, now you can understand, SA node is forming 100 beats per minute, but our normal heart rate is like 72 per minute. Then how it can, then who is the pacemaker there? The cause is that parasympathetic effect is working there. It is resting vagal tone inhibits the SA node firing to 72. So you can understand, not only every time sympathetic As we know, in resting conditions parasympathetic is activated, so this just decreases the rate from 100 to 72 minutes 72 per minute. So now let us see atropine. So atropine is a drug. Whenever we give to the patient, you can see heart rate is increased like 150 per minute. So this is of course a sympathetic effect, that is active when the parasympathetic system is blocked. So by atropine we are mainly blocking the parasympathetic nervous system. So if we block the parasympathetic nervous system, we can understand the effect of sympathetic system alone. So we need to block the parasympathetic system to find out the sympathetic system effect. So by atropine you can see there is heart rate increase like about 150 per minute. And the resting heart rate in patients with transplanted head. So let us see this case in a transplanted heart person, how the resting heart rate would be. So here also the SA node firing rate is like 100 per minute, 100 beats per minute. And here remember that in as such, in a transplanted heart patient, the heart rate remains as such of SA node, that is like 100 beats per minute, because the heart which is transplanted is denervated, that is it is not having any nervous connection because it is a heart from another body. So we are maintaining that heart by immunosuppressions and also auto, because our antibodies attack on it, so it is denervated, it is not nervated, it is not our original heart, so it is denervated heart. Hence, no sympathetic or parasympathetic effect is seen in a transplanted heart. So, in transplanted heart, the SA node firing rate is 100 only. But in normal persons, it's 72 because of parasympathetic activation. So, now let's see AV node. So, AV node physiological delay in the conduction of like about 0.1 second to allow the adequate ventricular relaxation. This is known as, AV node is also known as gatekeeper of a human heart. So AV node, why it delays for 0.1 second, because ventricle should fill before contraction. So if the ventricle can fill on, it can contract the blood, right? So for that sake, it keeps a delay of 0.1 second. It is called as gatekeeper of heart because it only should allow the flow of conduction by AV node. So AV node also has the lowest number of gap junctions and slowest conduction speed of like about 0.04 millimeter per meter per second. So now we are following the order. First, the conduction passes from SA node, next from SA node to AV node, and from AV node to his bundle, from his bundle to Purkinje fibers. So now let us see what is there in Purkinje fibers. So eventually, innervates the energy. The single ventricular myocardial cell has highest number of gap junctions and hence has highest conduction speed like about 4 millimeter per second. So you can see in AV node, we are having slowest conduction like 0.04, whereas in our Purkinje fibers, it is having highest conduction speed like 4 meter per second. And the reason is in AV node, the gap junctions are low and the conduction speed is low, whereas here the gap junctions are high, so the conduction speed is high. So by this, we can say that gap junctions is directly proportional to conduction speed. So if higher gap junctions, higher speed. If lower gap junctions, lower speed, like our AV node. In the case of AV node, you can see lower conduction speed, right? So low gap junctions. Here in Purkinje fibers, more gap junctions, more conduction speed. Now finally, we are going to discuss the cardiac gap junctions. So this is mainly formed by the group of proteins like connexins, and the location in the heart is like in a intercalated disc, it's nothing but also called as gap junction, and the highest number is present in our Purkinje fibers, hence they are having faster conduction, so which forms a functional syncytium, and allows a synchronized contraction of ventricles due to high conduction speed. So now let us see some of the MCQs. So which of the following is a function of hyperpolarizing cyclic nucleotide channel? Just now we have seen HCM, what it does, it mainly leads to generation of sinus rhythm. And the phase 2 of action potential is mainly due to, what is phase 2? Remember, that is a plateau phase, mainly due to calcium influx, of course. And impulse is generated at faster rates at, so many of them may think it as Purkinje fibers, right? You can think like impulse is generated faster rate. No, fastest conduction is seen in Purkinje fibers, but here they're saying impulse are generated. Where the impulse are generated 100 per minute, 100 beats per minute, that is in our SNA. So like this we need to think and solve out our questions. So this is all about our revision section about our cardiac action potentials. Later we'll also continue our series. Continue our CVS physiology revision series. So today we are going to discuss about ECG and JVP, that is jugular venous pressure. So let us start with ECG. So ECG is nothing but full form is electrocardiograph, right? So it is nothing but the representation of overall electrical activity of heart. Remember, it is representing the overall electrical activity of heart. Before we have seen the action potentials, although it is representing only about only the part of the heart, but this is representing the overall electrical activity of heart. So this is mainly given by our Enthoven, scientist Enthoven, who is awarded also with Nobel Prize for recording this ECG. And the number of total leads in ECG, we know we have having total 12 leads in ECG. In those 12 leads also, the 3 are limb leads. Limb leads means which are put on our hands and also on leg, one leg, right? That is on right arm, left arm and left leg. We are not using right leg here. And next 3 augmented leads. Augmented leads means these are only two here, only our arm, one arm, that is right arm is only single, and the left arm, left leg, both are joined together in the case of augmented leads. And we have the six chest leads like V1 to V6, right? So the 6 chest leads. So all leads have two ends. We know that we have one positive and one negative end. Here you can see one positive and one negative end. In any kind of lead we find the same thing. So ECG, what does ECG measure? Actually it measures the potential difference between the two ends. So we know we have one negative and one positive end. So between this negative and positive ends, the potential difference which exists between them, that is measured mainly by our ECG, by means of our ECG. So between the two ends, which is seen in the form of deflections and represented as waves. So they are mainly seen as deflections on our ECG paper, normal ECG pattern like this. So those are the deflections, and they are represented as waves like P wave, Q wave, right? So limb leads, these limb leads are also known as, you can imagine these limb leads like which are put on a hand, leg. So these are also known as Enthoven leads because he's the founder of this. So we use this name only, Enthoven leads. So 3 in number like lead 1, lead 2 and lead 3. So what is the Enthoven law? Enthoven law is nothing but lead 1 with lead 3 gives us lead 2. That is, by adding lead 1 with the lead 3 we can get the values of lead 2. So for example, you can see in an Enthoven triangle, this is a right arm, this is a left arm. In right arm we are putting negative charge. So always remember, current moves from negative side to positive side. So here from negative to positive, this is the lead 1 to the left arm, that is from the right arm to the left arm. And lead 2 is from the right arm to the left foot. From right arm is having negative charge and left foot is having positive charge. So negative to positive, again current is flowing. This is second limb lead. And the third limb lead is from negative to positive, again that is from the left arm to the left foot. So you can see in Enthoven triangle that the lead 1 have the negative end in the right arm, positive end in the left arm. And in the lead 2 you can see the negative end is in the right arm and the positive end is in the left foot. And in the lead 3 you can see the negative end is in the left arm and the positive end is in the left foot. So this is what we need to check here in Enthoven's triangle. And remember that right foot, you can understand that why we are not using right foot here. That is the main reason. The main reason behind why we are not using the right foot is it acts as a grounder to prevent the shock. You can understand here these 3 charges are used to develop the current, and also to they are receiving the current and also giving the current. So there is a chance of shock here. So to prevent that shock, we are using right foot as a grounding. So next let us see what are augmented leads. So these augmented leads are also known as Goldberg leads. So you can see here limb leads are called Enthoven leads because Enthoven found them. But the augmented leads are not found by Enthoven. Another scientist found it. So he is known as Goldberger. So these leads are also called as Goldberger leads. So these are also 3 in number as we already seen before. Total we have 12 leads. Among them the 3 leads are augmented leads, 3 leads are Enthoven leads, and other 6 leads, the major leads, big leads are chest leads. So augmented leads are 3 in number, that is AVR, AVL and AVF. So A here represent augmented. So what is the meaning of augmented? Augmented means increase. So increase, what is increase? Let us see. So the potential increase augments by 1.5 times. How the potential is increased? Actually what this Goldberg did is, he took only, for example in AVR, you can remember this first. AVR, here R means right arm. So here only right arm is positive and left arm and left leg are negative. So both negatives he tried to fuse them together. So by fusing both negatives together, he have got the
increase in the leads, so increase in potential in the leads. So by this that too it is increased by 1.5 times. So this is the thing which is done by Goldberger. So in Goldberger, according to Goldberger rule, here AVR, R means right arm is positive, here AVL means left arm is positive here. So this is left arm, only this is positive, remaining are negative. And AVF, F means here left foot, only left foot is positive, and the arms, both arms are negative here. So you can remember like this according to the names only, which are positive and which are negative. So the remaining negative ones are added together. So because of adding the both negatives, we got 1.5 times higher increase in the potential when compared with our normal Enthoven leads. So you can see one limb act as a positive end and the remaining two as a negative end, just we have seen. So in the case of AVR, right arm is positive. In the case of AVL, left arm is positive. In the case of AVF, left foot is positive. Whereas in the case of our AVR, the negative end is remaining left arm and left foot. So that's it, remaining you know it. So now let us see the leads and surfaces, leads and surfaces. So actually in a inferior surface leads, whenever we want to look at the heart from an inferior side, then we use the inferior surface leads like lead 2, lead 3 and AVF. So these are mainly used to see the inferior side of a heart. If there is any defect in inferior side, we can use this leads to find out. And septal lead, septal in the name you can understand the septum of ventricle. So here to find out the septal side, we can use V1 and V2 leads. And anterior surface leads are V3 and V4 leads. You can see the anterior surface of the heart, that is mainly towards the apex side. And lateral surface, you can understand the lateral surface right towards the left side of the heart. You can see this by V5, V6 leads, chest leads, and AVL augmented lead, that is left arm lead, and lead 1 of Enthoven. So all this together can lead to formation to means we can see the lateral surface and leads for cavity of heart. To see inside the cavity of heart or from the top of the heart, we have AVR. So you can see this all leads are like just CC cameras around our heart. So whenever we want to check the ECG, we want to see the all side of the heart whether it's functioning or not. So for inferior surface we have lead to 3 AVF, and for septal leads we have V1 and V2, that is to see septal side. And anterior surface we have V3, V4, and lateral side we have V5, V6, AVL and lead 1. And for the cavity, to see the cavity of the heart, we have mainly AVR. So now let us see the leads and coronary artery territories. That is how leads are connected with the coronary artery. Let us see. So each surface of heart mainly receives its supply from various territory of coronary artery. That is every surface of heart is receiving its own supply from coronary artery. So hence any deflections in leads reflects the changes in the territory of coronary artery. So by this method we can easily find out the changes in the coronary artery. So you can see in the inferior surface of the heart mainly supplied by the right coronary artery. So by using this inferior surface leads like our lead 2, 3 AVF, so by if there is any deflection or any abnormality in these leads, then we can uh, you know uh, predict that something is going wrong in right coronary artery. And anterior septal surface means if you combine these both leads, that is V1, V2, V3, V4, so this all together they give a view of a septal side of a heart and also anterior surface of the heart. So this anterior septal surface is mainly supplied by left anterior descending territory, that is LAD. So if there is any abnormality in LAD at coronary artery, then there will be also some abnormality in this leads like V3, V4, V1, V2 and V3, V4, that is at anterior septal surface. And next, lateral surface. As you know already, the lateral surface leads V5, V6, AVL lead 1. So if there is any abnormality in this, means left circumflex artery is abnormal. So according to the coronary arteries, you can just find out according to the surface of leads, we can find out which artery is wrong and which side of the heart is not well performing. So next on ECG paper, so let us see some details about ECG paper. You know, ECG paper, it helps in mainly calculating the duration and also amplitude of the waves, like for how much duration and amplitude. So on ECG paper actually one large square have 25 small squares. So for example, in one ECG paper like this, for one large square you have 25 small squares, and in that 25 small squares, if you take out one small square out, uh, Here we have the x-axis, here we have the y-axis. On x-axis we always have time, on y-axis we have amplitude. So you can see it helps in calculating the duration and amplitude. That's why here it is said like that, because duration we can find it out by x-axis of small square, and amplitude we can find it out by y-axis of the small square of the ECG. So one small square, one large square. So let us see how to find out what are the durations. So for one small square, the duration is 0.04 second. About the small square, the time on x-axis is 0.04 second. So to find the time duration of one large square, it is very simple, because as we said, there are the five small squares together form one large square. So 0.04 into 5 gives us 0.02 seconds. And next, amplitude of one small square is 0.1 millivolt. So total 5 squares, so 0.1 into 5 gives us 0.5 millivolts for one large square. So next, let us see the ECG waves, which are nothing but the rhythm of our life. So you can see here the typical normal ECG. So let us understand how these waves are formed. Here you can see the P wave. The P wave is positive in deflection. So this P wave occurs mainly due to, we know this, atrial depolarization. And QRS complex, we know this is mainly occurring due to ventricular depolarization. So first we have atrial depolarization followed by ventricular depolarization, and next we have the positive deflection again, T wave. T wave occurs due to ventricular repolarization. So till here we completed depolarization. Now ventricular repolarization is going on in T wave. Sometimes U wave may also be found in some patients. So this U wave have two reasons why it is formed. So it occurs mainly due to lateral repolarization, late repolarization of Purkinje fibers, are fast conducting fibers, and also sometimes due to the late repolarization of papillary muscle. So because of these two reasons, the UVA may be found in some persons. This is also a normal ECG. It also belongs to a normal ECG. So now let us learn the segments. So what are the segments? Segments are nothing but the straight lines which are present in our ECG. So the straight line or segments mainly denote there is no current flowing. That is an isoelectric line, means no current. You can see if it is straight means no current, zero current is flowing in them. So the number of segments in ECG are mainly two segments. What are those two segments? PR segment and ST segment. So what is PR segment? As the name, starting from P to Q, but not R. If you see here name PR, but it is not till R, only from P to uh, Q. So you can see here, oh, these are intervals, we'll see it later. So that is about PR segment. Yeah, this is a PR segment from the P to Q. There is a PR segment, and also we have one more segment called ST segment. ST segment is according to its name only from S to T wave. ST. So these are ST segments. So you can see here, these are the straight lines. They're not having any current flowing to them. That is the meaning of a segment. And next, you can see here the detail of PR segment. So PR segment time span is 0.1 second, and it extends from the end of P wave before onset of QRS complex, and there is no current flow occur due to physiological delay, that is mainly due to the AV nodal delay. So the physiology behind the PR segment is a AV nodal delay. And next let us see ST segment. ST segment extends from the end of QRS complex, that is from the completion of ventricular depolarization to before the onset of T wave. So this is before the starting of ventricular repolarization, of course, because T wave is a ventricular repolarization. So no current also flows here, and it acts as a joining point. So remember that ST segment also have another name. It is also called as J point. That is, it's a J. It is also called J because it is a joining point of ventricular depolarization with ventricular repolarization. Because here you can see this is del QRS complex. This is ventricular depolarization, and from T it is repolarization. So this is like a bridge or joining point between the ventricular depolarization and ventricular repolarization. So this is also called as J point, joining point. So any current flowing here denotes some pathological cause, that is myocardial infarction. Hence this current is also known as injury current. So normally, as we said in segments, the current should not flow. Yes, even in the ST segment the current should not flow, but sometimes in the case of mainly myocardial infarction, you can see this current, the current is passing in the ST segment. Then we'll say it as J point. J point is an injury current. Injury means any injury to the heart, then only this is formed. And now let us see the intervals. So we have understood till now about segments, normal ECG. Now let us see about intervals. So one ECG interval is equal to one ECG wave plus one segment. because you can see in intervals we will cover one wave, the like p wave like, and also one segment. So let us see how it is. So first let us start with pr interval, same like our pr segment. Only we have pr interval, it also starts from this p wave and ends till our ends at the beginning of qrs, same like our pr. So now we can understand in the pr interval we have one wave, that is p wave, along with pr segment. So that is nothing but our intervals. So intervals and segments, we need to understand the difference between them. So pr interval extends from the onset of p wave till onset of qrs complex. So it mainly comprises of p wave, that is atrial depolarization, followed by pr segment, that is nothing but av nodal ds. So pr segment denotes the av nodal delay. So can last up to 0.20 second, and the pr interval is from 0.12 second to 0.20 second. So these are very important to remember. So the prolonged pr interval, prolonged means you can understand this, time is increased greater than 0.20 second, that is seen mainly in cardiac blocks. So like this, by means of this measurements, by this we can easily find out any abnormalities or pathology in the case of our cardiac muscle or cardiac chambers. So next let us see PR interval. So PR interval extends between two successive R waves. You know R waves. This is one R wave, R wave. So between two R waves we have our PR interval used for the heart rate calculation, of course, because the RR interval is also called as heart rate, to find out the heart rate. And heart rate is equal to 1500 divided by the number of small squares between two R waves. By using this formula we can find out the heart rate. Next let us see the QT interval. We are having three intervals. First one is PR interval, and next one is only two intervals. Next one is QT interval. So QT interval extends from the before onset of QRS complex till the end of T wave. So it mainly compromise, you can understand this, onset of QRS till the T wave, as the name QT. Compromise of QRS complex, ST segment, T wave. So you can see here we have one, we have wave also, segment, and also QRS complex. So QT interval denotes the total ventricular activity, because in the QRS complex you can see ventricular depolarization. In ST segment you can see uh, in ST segment also you can see it is a joining point between depolarization and repolarization. In the T wave you can see repolarization. So total ventricular activity, that is ventricular depolarization and ventricular repolarization, is seen completely in our QT interval. So the normal value of QT interval is like from 0.40 second, and the QT interval changes according to the heart rate. So this is a mistake if you want to calculate or if you want to find some abnormalities, because if it changes with the heart rate, it will change, it is not correct. So QTC, it is a corrected value of QT interval, and it is mainly given by the Bezet's formula. So the new formula, Bezet's formula, is given. It is a corrected formula, now it can be used. So Beget's formula is QTC is equal to QT interval divided by under root of RR interval. So here QTC is the corrected QT interval. QT interval, from the Q wave to the end of T wave, and RR interval is a time from two consequent R waves. So now let us see the direction of depolarization and repolarization. So for the whole heart, the direction of depolarization and repolarization are opposite to each other, because for an individual, here, because normally it travels from the base to the apex in the case of depolarization, and from the apex to the base in the case of our repolarization, we know this. But this is for the whole heart. But if we are talking about an individual myocardial cell, then the direction of depolarization and repolarization are same. So these are the important points to remember, because it is differing in the case of whole heart, and also it is differing in the case of each myocardial cell. Next let us see the normal depolarization. It starts from the right side and progress to the left side in the case of heart, from right to left. There is a normal depolarization, that is from epicardium to endocardium to septum. Sorry, I think this is repolarization, because repolarization from right side to left side, that is from epicardium, endocardium to septum, whereas depolarization is from left side to right side, that is from septum to endocardium to epicardium. We know this, that is from base to apex. Base to apex is our depolarization. But this is repolarization. Repolarization is from right to left. You can remember like R, right side, repolarization. So repolarization is coming in opposite direction of this, like from epicardium to endocardium to septum. So this is seen in the case of each myocardial cell. We have seen its sorry, in the case of whole heart, because in whole heart it is opposite, but in the case of each myocardial cell they are same. The depolarization and repolarization are same if we consider each myocardial cell. And also we have some new kind of ECG interesting. There is His bundle ECG. So His bundle ECG, you can see it consists of 3 waves and 3 intervals, that's it. So what are those 3 waves? You can see A wave, H wave, B wave. It is looking somewhat different, right, from a normal ECG, but we'll also compare it with the normal ECG. So the 3 waves are A wave. A wave, as the name A for AV nodal activity, it depicts the AV nodal activity. In H wave, H for H, it depicts the His bundle activity. And V for V, depicts the ventricular depolarization. So it is very easy. According to the starting letter, you can say A wave is for our AV nodal activity, H wave for our His bundle, V wave for our ventricular depolarization. So what are those 3 intervals? Here you may be surprised, like PA interval, where is this P coming from? So this P we are taking in comparison with our normal ECG. Then with our normal ECG to A wave, that is the PA interval, that is between the P wave and the A wave. And AH interval, of course, in this between AV node to His bundle, and H wave between His bundle to ventricular depolarization. Very easy. So prolongation of any of this interval mainly depicts the heart block or cardiac conduction block. So this His bundle ECG is mainly found to know the or to predict the heart blocks or cardiac conduction blocks. So next let us see cardiac axis. So cardiac axis is mainly located between minus 30 degrees to plus 110 degree. This is a normal cardiac axis, and plus 59 degrees is a mean QRS axis. So we have a detailed video on vector analysis in our channel also already. If we want some more details, you can also check it there. And next let us see the internal jugular vein and JVP, that is internal jugular vein pressure waves. So even JVP also having waves. Let us see what are those. So the vein is preferred for JVP, that is internal jugular vein, due to its straight course. So remember, we have according to anatomy, if you listen or if you study the anatomy, we have external jugular vein and internal jugular vein. But if you see the anatomy of external jugular vein, it is curved, somewhat curved and away from our superior vena cava or from our heart, especially our right atrium. So whereas if you see our internal jugular vein, it is in direct contact with our atria, it is very straight. So we choose the internal jugular vein for this. So JVP forms a wave pattern. So we have here A wave, C wave and V wave, but these are the positive waves, you can see. Whereas X wave, it is going downward, even Y wave is going downward. So these are the descents, these are called as descents, X descent and Y descent. So let us see the 5 wave forms of JVP and their causes. So you can see the waves. A wave is positive, right, and the cause is atrial contraction. According to A, atrial contraction. C wave is also positive, yes, it is due to right ventricular contraction. So you can see here C wave especially right ventricle, because this is related to right side of the heart. This is causing the tricuspid valve bulging into right atrium. So you can understand, when right ventricle undergoes contraction, of course, upon it we have tricuspid valve separating from right atrium. So even the tricuspid valve is bulging into the right atrium because of right ventricular contraction. And we have the X descent. You can see here X descent is negative, yeah, of course negative, and it is mainly representing the right atrial filling. And next we have the V wave. V wave is positive. It is again representing our right atrial relaxation. And we have Y descent is negative. It is representing the right atrial emptying into the right ventricle. So last, let us see some of the MCQs related to this. So what is the value of lead 2 when lead 1 is 2 and lead 3 is 1? So you can understand easily direct formula 2 plus 1 3, because lead 1 plus lead 3 is equal to lead 2. So 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. And in a standard ECG, an that is electrocardiogram, an augmented limb lead measures electrical potential difference between, yeah, we know, between one limb lead and two other limbs. The two other limbs are, if they are negative, right, they are negative and they are combined each other. So A wave in JVP is due to A for A, atrial contraction. So that's it about our today's ECG, and let us continue our CVS physiology series. Let's continue our revision series of CVS physiology. We're going to start now cardiac cycle.
So we know cardiac cycle, normal introduction. So the normal duration of cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. For the heart rate of 72 beats per minute, we know this. So the total amount of means the total time in which the cardiac cycle completes is 0.8 second for the heart rate of 72 minutes. So this is very important definition. So you know in atrium and ventricles the systole and diastole goes long, but in atrium if you see the systole S for S, the systole is short, that is only for 0.1 second, whereas the diastole is longer in atrium, that is for about 0.7 seconds. So these are the values we need to remember. Systole as far as short it is 0.1, whereas in diastole it's longer, d diastole longer, that is 0.7 seconds. Whereas coming to ventricles also, here also the systole as far as short, systole is short, but here in the ventricles the time period is 0.3 seconds, whereas the diastole is here also longer, that is 0.5 seconds. So wherever you see the normal duration of cardiac cycle is said to be 0.8, because if you plus them 0.7 plus 0.1, of course 0.8, again 0.5 plus 0.3, 0.8. So nothing but the total duration of a systole and diastole is a cardiac cycle, so it will be 0.8 seconds for the heart rate of 72 beats per minute. So you know cardiac cycle is actually inversely proportional to heart rate. That is, if the heart rate increases, then the cardiac cycle decreases. Why this happens is because normally you know the blood should completely fill into the ventricle, then only next cardiac cycle can occur. But whereas here as the cardiac cycle is increased, for example if the cardiac cycle is increased means heart rate is decreased, uh, or you can take it in reverse, like heart rate is increased means cardiac cycle is decreased. Why when the heart rate is increased the cardiac cycle decreases is you know when a heart rate is more, heart doesn't have more time to fill complete blood in the ventricle, so the next cardiac cycle comes quicker. So because of this reason, increase in heart rate decreases the cardiac cycle. And mainly during exercise you know there is increase in heart rate like for 200 beats per minute, and the cardiac cycle duration is decreased mainly to 0.3 seconds. So the total amount of cardiac cycle is only 0.3 seconds. We know the normal is 0.8, but in an exercising person normally the cardiac cycle will be 0.3 seconds. In that the systole is only 0.12 second and the diastole is 0.18 second. You can see a rapid decrease in diastole. Before you can see mainly in the here we are concerning about our ventricles only, because cardiac cycle mostly has its importance in ventricle when compared with our atrium. So in ventricle you can see in the normal diastole is like 0.5 seconds, but here it has dropped a lot to 0.18 seconds. The reason is that low ventricular filling going on in a diastole. So in a exercising person, as the heart rate is increased to about 200 beats per minute, the cardiac cycle is decreased to 0.3 seconds. So this is important to remember. And next, if the cardiac cycle duration decreases, of course the diastole decreases and the ventricular filling is compromised. So now let us see the phases of cardiac cycle. First let us see the phases of systole, and next let us see the phases of diastole. So actually systole, as we said, in a ventricle mainly it lasts for 0.3 seconds. So here you can remember the three keyword, because we have three phases in systole. Whereas in diastole you know its total time period is 0.5 seconds, right? So here you can remember 5. 5 total 5 phases are there in a cardiac cycle. So this is an easy way to remember. So cardiac cycle in ventricles mainly systole is 0.3 seconds, so 3 phases. Diastole 0.5 seconds, so 5 phases. So first let us start with the systole 3 phases. So what are those 3 phases? First let us see. The first one is isovolumetric contraction, next one is rapid phase ejection, next one is slow ejection phase. So let us see them one by one. The first one is isovolumetric contraction. So here in the name itself we can understand iso volume means the volume is constant, whereas the pressure is increased. Here you know actually the ventricle is pumping in a closed chamber, because both the mitral valve and aortic valve are closed. So here the mitral valve closes and produces the heart sound S1. So here because of closure of mitral valve it gives a heart sound S1, and it ends by opening of aortic valve. Means this isovolumetric contraction, why this is going on, its main goal is to now open the aortic valve so that the pressure of this ventricle is higher enough to eject the blood into the aorta. So that is the main reason. So this stage ends by opening of aortic valve. And next comes our rapid phase ejection. Of course, after contraction, isovolumetric contraction, now blood need to go into the aorta. So what happens here is 2/3 of ventricular volume is ejected. Almost 2/3 of the ventricular volume is ejected now into the aorta. And next comes the slow ejection phase. So slow ejection phase is
close to one third of remaining of ventricular volume is ejected. So before we said two-third is already ejected, so the remaining one-third is also ejected in a slow ejection, hence the name slow, because only some part is now ejecting out into the ventricle. So the volume of blood remaining after the slow ejection phase. So remember, even after ejecting, ventricle will not eject complete blood even after ejection. That too, even after ejection of that one third of remaining blood also, there is some blood still remaining in a ventricle. That is called as end systolic volume. Why it is called as end systolic? Because at the end of systole, still some blood is present. So the name end systolic volume. And next, that's it about our systolic. So we have three phases: isovolumetric contraction, rapid phase ejection, slow ejection phase. So now let us see the phases of diastole. So in diastole we have total five phases. The first one is protodiastole, second one is again isovolumetric relaxation, rapid filling phase, fourth one is slow filling phase, fifth one is active filling phase. So the first one is protodiastole. So protodiastole is the proto means first phase of diastole. So it is nothing but done by the closure of aortic valve. Of course, now the heart, the ventricle need to relax now. So in relaxing phase, first if it close the aortic valve, then it is like coming into relaxation phase. So the blood will not come back from the aorta into the ventricle now. So this is the first stage. So it is called as protodiastole. And now you can understand. Always remember, closing of valves cause the heart sound. So here now aortic valve is closing and it is giving a heart sound, that is nothing but our H2. So the first heart sound we have heard it in our isovolumetric contraction because of closure of mitral valve. Here we are listening a second heart sound in a diastole first phase, that is protodiastole, due to the closure of aortic valve, that is beginning of diastole, produces the S2. Next, coming to isovolumetric relaxation. Here also you can understand now the both valves are closed, that is aortic and mitral valve. So now again the ventricle is relaxing as a closed chamber. So here the volume is constant as the name isovolumetric, and the pressure is also decreased. Next, coming to rapid filling phase. So rapid filling phase and slow filling phase, we have two filling phase. Rapid filling phase means here most of the blood is coming from the atria because the mitral valve is open now. So it is coming without any contraction of atria, means it's passively coming without any work done by atria. So passive filling, that is about 80% of blood comes like this without any work done. Whereas in slow filling phase you can see it is this rapid filling phase is also called as diastasis because the blood is just coming without any work done. Whereas active filling phase is there, that is the fifth phase, where 20% of filling is due to the atrial contraction, that is also called as atrial kick, means atria is kicking the blood from the atrium into the ventricle. So this is mainly by doing the work, that is contraction of atria. So this is called as active because it's contracting actively. So it is 20% of so remember, by active filling 20% of blood reaches our ventricle, whereas by passive filling 80% of blood come on itself. So first rapid filling phase, next slow filling phase, next the active filling phase. So next the volume remaining, yeah, even after all this also, like all the blood has come, the volume remaining after the diastole, that is end diastolic volume. Now you can guess, always like end diastolic volume will be higher because already almost all of the blood is coming now. 80% of blood is coming passively, 20% of the blood is coming by contraction of atria. So you can understand end diastolic volume will be always higher when compared with the end systolic volume, because end systolic volume is after contraction the remaining blood, so it will be only somewhat some very much low, whereas end diastolic volume is very high. So this is about our systole and diastole. Now let us see the heart sounds. Already we know S1 and S2, but we also have S3 and S4. Once again, let us see all the heart sounds. So S1 is closure of mitral valve on the left side, and also we have, don't forget our right heart. Even in the right side, we have a tricuspid valve. So closure of AV valves actually leads to formation of S1 sound during, that too mainly during isovolumetric contraction. And next, coming to S2. S2 is due to closure of aortic and pulmonary valves, that is our semilunar valves. So closure of semilunar valves, that too during protodiastole, that is the first phase of diastole, leads to formation of heart sound S2. Next, S3. S3 is due to rapid filling phase, that is rapidly the blood is coming. So here mainly during exercise the rapid filling is enhanced, and this causes vibration in ventricular wall. So during rapid filling, if there are some vibrations, that can be heard as a S3 sound. And next, coming to S4 sound. S4 sound is always pathological. So all these are physiological, that is they are always coming in normal conditions. But S4 is pathological. There is forceful atrial contraction against stiff ventricles. So why this is pathological is, here the ventricles are not okay. The atrium is okay, but the ventricle is not okay because the ventricle is stiffened. So what are the conditions where the ventricle can get stiffened? Examples like restrictive cardiomyopathy, hypertension. Restrictive in the name itself, that is restricted means ventricle is stiffened, and due to hypertension also ventricles may get stiffened. So because of this, now atria need to forcefully contract. So because of that forceful contraction, you can hear a heart sound, that is S4. So it is pathological. And next, let us see the volume pressure changes. So volume remains same in isovolumetric. IVC means not inferior vena cava, it's isovolumetric contraction. In isovolumetric contraction, we know the volume remains same and increases during filling and decreases during ejection. This is about ventricle. In ventricle, the volume is constant in the case of isovolumetric contraction, whereas volume increases during filling, right, and volume decreases during ejection, because ventricle should pump, means it is contracting, decreasing the force. So during ejection the volume is decreased, whereas pressure also may increase or decrease. So let us see the graph here and understand this. So this is an important graph to understand. So here you can see, on this is an x-axis and this is a y-axis. On x-axis you can see we are having volumes. On y-axis you can see we are having pressures. So on x-axis we are having mainly volumes, means end systolic volume and end diastolic volume. As we said already, end diastolic volume will be more because of more filling, so 120 ml. End systolic volume will be below 50 ml. So here this side you can see the pressures. So now let us start. So first, in end systolic volume from A point to B point, that is end diastolic volume. Between end systolic and end diastolic volume, the ventricle is undergoing the process of filling. That too, 80% of it is passive filling and 20% of it is going active filling, right? We know that. So at A point, actually what happens, mitral valve open, because end systolic volume means after systole, you can understand the mitral valve will open for the filling, so the mitral valve opens here. Whereas at end diastolic volume, diastole means after relaxation. After relaxation of ventricle, you can understand some of the blood may go back, so the again it is closure of mitral valve takes place here, because some of the blood may go black. So here in the, as there it is, mitral valve is closing it at the point B, we can hear the S1 heart sound. And next here you can see, after this, now we can start our systolic phase. In systolic phase, we know we have 0.3 seconds, so three phases. The first one, it is isovolumetric contraction. Before isometric contraction there will be closure of mitral valve, so isovolumetric contraction takes place. And next, opening of aortic valve, because at the end of isovolumetric contraction our aortic valve will open so that ejection can take place. So here there is opening of aortic valve, and here you can see rapid ejection phase, because ejection too takes place, and we know two-third volume of blood is ejected. And after that, we are having slow ejection phase. In slow ejection phase, only we know one-third of the volume of blood is getting ejected, and after that we are having D phase. So here in the D phase, it is end of systole, so all our three phases of systole are completed. Now the first phase of diastole is our protodiastole. So the protodiastole phase started here. And next, what happens, isovolumetric relaxation takes place. So here at the D point, you can understand, here as opening of aortic valve takes place, here closure of aortic valve takes place, because next phase is isovolumetric relaxation. So in relaxation, again both valves are closed, and now heart is relaxing, that is ventricle is relaxing as a closed chamber. So here we'll write down that at the D point aortic valve is closed. So if you are clear with this, we can frame any questions. So you can see here the mitral valve is open, here mitral valve is closed, and here aortic valve is opening, here aortic valve is closed. So then what happens here, heart sound S2 is heard. So S1 is heard here and S2 is heard here. So now let us see some points. Yeah, S1, that is first heart sound, is heard at point B, right, because of closure of mitral valve, and S2 is heard at point D because of closure of AV valve. So that is aortic valve. So this is about our graph. It is very easy to understand, and here you can see we have divided this because all the division, above this division we can see systole, because we are having three systolic phases, that is isovolumetric contraction and rapid ejection phase, slow ejection phase, whereas below this systole you can see this diastole, because here we are having protodiastole, and also we are having isovolumetric relaxation. So these are diastole, and also here ventricular filling. So all these are diastolic phases. So now let us see. So now here let us see the stroke volume and ejection fraction. So from this diagram only we can also find out the formulas, that is for stroke volume and ejection fraction. So what is stroke volume? You know, stroke volume formula is nothing but end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. So for example, from this example you can see end diastolic volume is 120, end systolic volume is 50. So you can say 120 minus 50, we get 70 milliliters of stroke volume. And next, ejection fraction. So ejection fraction is nothing but in the total amount of end diastolic volume divided by stroke volume, means how much amount of stroke volume. You know, stroke volume already we can find out this by this formula. For example, if we want to substitute this here, 70 already we got stroke volume, divided by 120 is the end diastolic volume. As this is a fraction, we need to multiply it with 100. So finally we get the ejection fraction as 55 to 65% according to this diagram. And next, how to find out the end diastolic volume? Here we just take end systolic volume divided by 1 minus ejection fraction. So from this formula only we can now easily get also our end systolic volume, that is end diastolic volume into, like this, right, into 1 minus ejection fraction, then we can get a end systolic volume. So this is how we derive the formulas from this graph. So we can use this to calculate some of our MCQ points. And next, coming to Vickers diagram. So Vickers diagram is also simple, let us understand this. And here we have the phonocardiogram, which is a technique of reading our hearts, recording the heart sound, that is, you know, our S1, S2, S3, S4. So ECG correlation of heart sounds, we'll see, yeah, we'll see it here. So S1, you can see this is the first heart sound, S1. S1, where is it is correlating with our ECG? You can see this is a QRS complex, right? So S1 correlates with QRS complex of ECG, right? That is IVC, means in isovolumetric contraction. You know, in isovolumetric contraction, ventricular repolarization takes place. Contraction means depolarization, sorry, not repolarization. Ventricular contraction means depolarization. During depolarization, you know, QRS complex will form, especially it is related with R complex. S1, heart sound 1, is related mainly with R wave. The next, coming to S2. So where is our S2? S2 is occurring during which phase? Isovolumetric relaxation. Isovolumetric relaxation means, you can understand, that is ventricle is undergoing repolarization, means it is associated with our T wave with the ECG. So that's it. And next, S3. S3, you know, it is coming when there is not here. S3, you know, when it is coming during rapid filling wave, that is due to rapid filling of blood from atria to ventricle, that causes S3. And next, coming to S4. S4 is forceful atrial contraction, so it is again associated with our P wave. So here comes S4. S4 means forceful atrial contraction. So you know, atrial contraction means atrial depolarization. Atrial depolarization is related with our P wave. So P wave is associated with S4. S3 just rapid ejection, due to that you know, rapid filling pressure only it is formed. So this is how we can relate the ECG with our sound, heart sounds, that is phonocardiogram. And now first let us see this graph. So here actually, you know, this is this is our biggest diagram. In this figure diagram, the top one is mainly related with pressures, volumes, and this lower one is related with ECG phonocardium. If we take out this top one and we zoom it, we can see this one. So you can see here we are having pressures, and here we are having the first one. Here we are having the left ventricular pressure, and the second one we are having the left atrial pressure, and the third one we are having the aortic pressure. So here we are mainly going to see the pressures of aorta, left ventricle, left atrium during the different phases of cardiac cycle. So first let us observe the left ventricular pressure. So you can see this mountain, like this is the left ventricular pressure. So left ventricular pressure, let us start with starting isovolumetric contraction. In contraction you can understand it will go till the peak. When it is going towards the peak, later aortic valve opens and descends, and the rapid ejection starts. Because of rapid ejection the blood is ejected, so the pressure is also high. Next, isovolumetric relaxation is going on in the ventricle, so again it starts coming down. And next, rapid ventricular filling. Now the ventricle is getting filled, so again somewhat you got somewhat curve like thing because somewhat it is increased. And next, here what happens, after rapid ventricular filling, uh, the mitral valve opens. Yeah, after mitral valve opening only rapid ventricular filling takes place, because from atria only our blood is coming to ventricle, right? And next, our rapid ventricular diastasis. Yeah, during diastasis the blood is now filling into the ventricles, so it is constant like this. So this is about our left ventricular pressure. And second, now let us see the left atrial pressure. In atria during these stages what is going on. So in atria, and also about this one more thing in ventricular pressure, you can see during aortic this is during arterial systole, that is during atrial systole. In atrial systole, what happens to the ventricle, it is still in a filling phase. So that's it about ventricular pressure. Now let us see about left atrial pressure during this cases. Actually in left atrial pressure we'll get C wave, and first we'll get A wave, C wave, B wave. During atria, the first one you can see in isovolumetric contraction, it gets first, during atrial contraction only it will get A wave, and during isovolumetric contraction it gets C wave, because in isovolumetric contraction some of the blood pushes towards the mitral valve and it kicks to give a C wave, some ejection C wave. And in atria, B wave continues as it undergoes the filling from a lungs coming from its venous system. So that is about left atrial pressure. And next, third one we have the aortic pressure. So what happens to the aortic pressure? Actually aortic pressure takes it begins from a rapid ejection only, because aortic valve opens, then only it's rapid ejection. So because of rapid ejection the aortic pressure also goes higher, and during relaxation it comes lower again, because of ventricular filling it is closed, right? So it comes and fall down. So this is about the pressures we have seen here. So we have completed this aortic pressure, atrial pressure, ventricular pressure. So only the remaining one is our ventricular volume from this. So ventricular volume, it's very easy to understand. During isovolumetric contraction, it is contraction, so the volume it decreases, because contraction means ventricle is getting lower, so the uh, decreases. Even during ejection it decreases rapidly, because contraction, it should contract, decreased, so it is decreased. But whereas during relaxation it again recovers and comes back, because due to rapid filling the volume increases. And again during atrial systole it the volume decreases, because again it should be ready to pump as the blood is increasing. Now it's ready to contract and again comes to the normal. So this is about our ventricular volume. So next we have some clinical terminologies like electromechanical systole means QS2. QS2 means Q means here QRS complex. S2 means second heart sound. So the period between the QRS complex to the closure of aortic valve, because S2 means closure of aortic valve, that is called as electromechanical systole. And next comes the LVET means left ventricular ejection time. This is the period between carotid pressure rise to closure of aortic valve, closure of aortic valve produces a dichotic notch in a graph, that is left ventricular ejection time, the period between the carotid pressure rise to the closure of aortic valve, which produces a dichotic notch. And next comes the pre-ejection period. Pre-ejection period is also QS2 minus this LVET, that is left ventricular ejection time. So this fraction PEP by LVET is equal to 0.35. So this mainly correlates with negativity with ejection fraction. That means if ejection fraction is high, then PEP LVET is low, means they are like inversely proportional. PEP by LVET is inversely proportional to ejection fraction. If PEP is L by LVET is high, then ejection fraction is low, like that, they are inversely proportional. So that is all about our cardiac cycle, all important points.
So back to our channel, we are going to end our cardiac physiology revision part by this cardiac output. So cardiac output in normal, it's 5 liter per minute. So let us see some of the regulating factors of it. And before that, we need to see the formula also. Cardiac output is equal to heart rate into stroke volume. So we know heart rate is directly proportional to cardiac output. By this formula, you can see both heart rate and stroke volume are directly proportional to cardiac output. So now let us see what are the parameters which are affecting the heart rate. So you can see both the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are the factors which affect the heart rate. So sympathetic nervous system release a chemical norepinephrine. This in turn increases the heart rate, and parasympathetic nervous system release acetylcholine, which decreases the heart rate. And coming to cardiac output side, that is stroke volume side. So stroke volume, the parameters which are affecting the stroke volume are, you can remember, like mnemonic CAP, C for contractility, A for afterload, P for preload. So contractility, afterload, preload, CAP. So increase in contractility, of course, increases the stroke volume. That is, you can understand, if we increase the ventricular contractility, more ejection will take place, more stroke volume. So hence also more cardiac output. And increase in afterload. Afterload is nothing but like increase in aortic pressure. You can understand, if there is more aortic pressure, then it's hard for our left ventricle to pump against this aortic pressure. So this leads to in turn decrease in stroke volume. So always remember, if the preload increases, then stroke volume increases, but if the afterload increases, then it is hard for the heart to pump, so stroke volume decreases. And preload increases, yeah. So, and one more thing, what is preload? Preload is nothing but the end diastolic volume. End diastolic volume is like when heart is relaxing, the lot of blood is accumulated there in the heart, like so much blood. So that is like now the heart is having the capability to pump it into the aorta. So increase in preload, increase in stroke volume. And now let us see the preload in detail. So preload is nothing but the volume of blood which is received by the left ventricle. How it is received, let us see. So blood first comes from venous return, inferior, superior vena cava, into right atrium, from right atrium into right ventricle, from right ventricle into lungs, from lungs into left atrium, from left atrium into left ventricle, and finally in the left ventricle it rests like a end diastolic volume. So this end diastolic volume, that nothing but forms a preload. So this preload helps in like increasing the contraction of a heart. So Frank-Starling law is mainly dependent on the preload. So increase in end diastolic volume or nothing but increase in preload leads to increase in force of contraction. So within the physiological limits, this is a Frank-Starling law. So increase in preload, increase in end diastolic volume, which further increases the contractility of the heart and in turn increase the stroke volume. Of course, also increase the finally our effect or finally our output, that is our cardiac output. So let us see what are the best markers for this different parameters. So for the preload, you can say now without seeing, that is end diastolic volume, and for afterload our parameter is of course our aortic pressure or total, even also aortic pressure we can say it like total peripheral resistance. Total peripheral resistance means the same pressure, the same opposing pressure which is present in all peripheral tissues, or peripheral blood vessels. And contractility, for contractility of course ejection fraction, because how much amount of blood is contracted or ejected by our ventricle, mainly our left ventricle into aorta, right? And inotropy. So actually before discussing inotropy, we need to see one contractility function like pathology. So whenever there is decrease in contractility, then nothing but it is leading to heart failure. So heart failure means there is decrease in contraction. So what is inotropy? Inotropy means the property of contractility. So in heart failure patients, we give positive inotropic agents because already contractility is low in those patients. So what are those positive inotropic drugs or agents? Like we can give digoxin, dobutamine. So these are the drugs which can increase the contractility and cardiac output. So you can see increase in ejection fraction in heart failure. Yeah, also of course increase in contractility is nothing but its parameter is ejection fraction. So like you can see this words are like synonyms. For preload, end diastolic volume is synonym. For afterload, aortic pressure or total peripheral resistance is synonym. For contractility, ejection fraction is synonym. And contractility we call it as inotropy, it is not synonym.
So you can see the synonyms of our cardiac language. So next let us see the measurement of cardiac output. So how to measure the cardiac output? We mainly have two principles. The first one is Fick's principle, the second one is the cardiac index ratio. So Fick's principle is nothing but the amount of oxygen consumption, means how much amount of oxygen is consumed, how we can find out. We have a formula. So amount of oxygen consumption is equal to arteriovenous oxygen difference into blood volume. So arteriovenous oxygen difference means the amount of blood which is present in artery side minus the amount of blood which is present in venous side. So that gives the oxygen difference between them. And into blood flow. Blood flow is nothing but again indicated with our cardiac output. So from this formula only we can again get another formula to find out the cardiac output. Now we can see, we can use this blood flow like as a parameter here. See, blood flow or cardiac output is equal to oxygen consumption divided by arteriovenous oxygen difference. This is very easy. So the formula is again, let us repeat, cardiac output is equal to oxygen consumption divided by the arteriovenous oxygen difference. So next let us see what is cardiac index ratio. So it also have a formula. Actually it is nothing but the measurement of cardiac output per body surface area. So you can see cardiac output divided by body surface area. So normal cardiac index ratio, the normal value is 32 liter per minute per meter square body surface area. So for meter square of body surface area we have 32 liters of cardiac output per minute. And next move on to our regulation of cardiac distribution of cardiac output. So here we are going to see some of the values of our body in the regions of body which have the highest like these parameters we will discuss, and which is having the lowest value. So blood flow per milliliter per minute means for 1 milliliter per minute the blood flow is highest in our liver with 1500 value and lowest in our heart with 250 value. So you can see the blood flow is going more to liver. Everyone think it goes more to brain because brain can't stay with her, but because person faints if no blood, but liver takes more amount of blood, and the lowest blood is taken by heart itself. Heart only pumps blood, but it's so kind that it takes only few blood. And blood flow milliliter per 100 gram. So blood flow now before we are seeing per minute, now we are going to see for 100 grams. So for 100 grams kidney is taking more blood like 420 and skeletal muscle is taking 2.7. and now we are going to see arteriovenous oxygen difference. So this oxygen difference in arteriovenous is highest in the case of heart, that is 114, and it is in kidneys it is lowest like 14. And oxygen consumption milliliter per minute. So which organ is taking more oxygen? Yeah, again liver is in top. Liver is taking the oxygen. So liver is only taking more blood flow and also oxygen, and skin is taking the lowest oxygen. And oxygen consumption per 100 grams. So per 100 grams heart is taking more oxygen. Now I'm happy because heart is taking it, and the lowest one the skin and skeletal muscle are taking. So let us see the percent of total cardiac output. So the total cardiac output, of course, now you can say the answer because liver is taking more blood, liver is taking more oxygen. Of course, liver is also giving more cardiac output, and heart is having lowest cardiac output because in everything it is like in the least values. And percent of total oxygen consumption, yeah, again the liver top. So liver is the topper here. It is having all highest values. So even in the oxygen consumption, liver is highest with 204 and skin is least with 4.8. So now let us come to our heart. In heart circulation, that is our coronary circulation. So this is also called as nothing but coronary blood flow. So the heart receives only 250 ml, that is only 5% of cardiac output. It is producing 5 liters cardiac output, but it is taking only 5% of cardiac output. So cardiac blood, that is coronary blood flow occurs mainly during diastole. That is, it is in relaxing phase. So as I said, relaxing, it also relaxingly take the blood, right? But why it is not taking in systole? Let us see. Coronary arteries compress during systole. So because of the compression, it is like struggling there. So only during diastole relaxation, it is taking happily its blood. So the subendocardial region is more susceptible to compression, hence it is more prone to ischemia. So you can see, remember this, in subendocardial region it is having more compression. So because of more compression, you can understand the blood flow is compressed there or blood flow is decreased there, so having higher chances of ischemia. And heart has the highest arteriovenous difference. Yeah, we have seen before like 114. Yeah, highest arteriovenous difference is in heart. And also heart has an highest oxygen consumption, that is per 100 grams. Yeah, and how this coronary circulation is regulated. Now let us see. It is having nervous control, but it's not like so much use because it's only in minor control, and local control mainly regulates the coronary blood flow. So what are those local controls? So local accumulation of chemicals increases the coronary blood flow, like mainly are adenosine, nitric oxide, potassium, hydrogen, lactate. So you can see all these chemicals can increase the coronary blood flow. See, these are the local factors which increase the coronary blood flow. So coronary blood flow is a major source of oxygen for heart. Yeah, of course, the blood only carries the oxygen. So coronary blood flow is a major source for oxygen for heart, and myocardial oxygen consumption is directly proportional to heart rate, duration of systole, and also systolic blood pressure. So how much oxygen, for example, if heart rate is high, then oxygen consumption is high, and if duration of systole is high, then oxygen consumption is high, and if systolic blood pressure is high, oxygen consumption to myocardium is high. So like this they are related. So next let us see the postural variation of cardiac output. That is, if you change the postures, especially in this example they said that on immediate standing. Now for example, if you are sitting, so if you are suddenly standing, what happens to your cardiac parameters? Let us see. So for blood pressure, it decreases because of transient fall. You can see in the graph itself, because of baroreflex. Venous return also decreases, so because of venous pooling. As venous return decrease, of course cardiac output decrease. You know, if cardiac output decrease, total peripheral resistance increase. How we are saying this? See here we have a formula. Blood pressure is equal to cardiac output into total peripheral resistance. Always they are inversely proportional. When our cardiac output is decreased, total peripheral resistance is increased, because you know when total peripheral resistance is increased, it is hard for a ventricle to pump, so cardiac output finally decreases. So this is how the relation is. So from this formula we can find it out. And heart rate increases. So you can see among all this everything decreases, only heart rate and total peripheral resistance increase. So this is important. So while you are changing your position, especially when you are sitting and suddenly standing, only your heart rate increases and also only your total peripheral resistance increases. All the remaining things decrease, like central venous pressure, cardiac output, venous return, blood pressure. So all these are decreasing. So let's move on to next part, that is physiology of hypovolemic shock. So actually we have 5 types of shock, like hypovolemic shock, neurogenic shock, cardiogenic shock, and also anaphylactic and septic shock. But among all this shock, the famous and most important shock is hypovolemic shock. So in the hypovolemic shock, there is of course shock only means decrease in blood flow. If you can understand, if there is low blood flow means low cardiac output to the tissue. So it eventually lead to shock. So first let us see hypovolemic shock. So the most common cause of this hypovolemic shock is hemorrhage, like accidents. Because of accidents, you know, a lot of blood is lost, that is hemorrhage. So we are having different stages of hypovolemic shock, like the first one is non-progressive stage, progressive stage is the second one, and the third one is a irreversible stage. So let us see each of them. The first one is non-progressive. Non-progressive means it is also called as compensative, means during as a lot of blood is lost, so how our body can compensate? The main most importance goes to our sympathetic nervous system. You know, it activates the norepinephrine, that is releasing the norepinephrine, which in turn increases the heart rate, increases the cardiac output, increases the blood pressure. So this is like compensation, because here during hypovolemic shock lot of blood is lost. So to compensate this, sympathetic system is activated, it increases the heart rate, increases the cardiac output, in turn increases the blood pressure. And also there is compensation at the level of kidneys, like norepinephrine cause the constriction of efferent arteriole. As efferent arteriole is constricted, so the blood is now easily deviated from the kidney, so urine production is also no low. So because of this, the volume of the blood is also maintained, and the major maintenance of our blood volume is done by our antidiuretic hormone ADH. So this ADH conserve the water. So because of this, you know, it is antidiuresis, means it prevents the excess urine formation, so that most of the water is reabsorbed, and it lead to in turn increase the blood volume. So these are the compensations. So because of this compensation, I think the person may not go to that stage. It is like safe side. But progressive state, the death is inevitable without treatment. So proper treatment is necessary for the progressive stage. If there is no proper treatment, it may lead to death. So why this progressive stage is prone to death? Because it is having positive feedback going on. So you can remember, like progressive for P per P for P, positive feedback, progressive stage. So here there is decrease in coronary blood flow. So because of this, it is giving positive feedback cycle like cardiac deterioration. So as cardiac deterioration is furthermore increasing, it giving again positive feedback to say that again decrease in cardiac coronary blood flow. So this is about progressive stage, why it is leading to death. So even clot may form because the blood is only revolving here and here. So clot may form in small blood vessels, and this clot formation further decreases the blood flow to the heart. And next let us see the irreversible stage. So irreversible state is like death happens even if you do whatever treatment. So you can see death is inevitable despite the treatment. So what happens, why the reason here death, why it is irreversible? Because the cellular deterioration of energy stores has taken place, like ATP has gone, creatine and phosphate has gone. So even the regeneration of adenosine occurs only very slowly, like just 2% of original value per hour. So per hour if only 2% will form, I think it can't compensate our whole body's ATP, creatine. So it is leading to irreversible stage, that is death is inevitable. What kind of treatment is done? So next let us see the neurogenic cardiogenic shock. So what is neurogenic? In the name itself you can see neurogenic. Genic means from where it is coming. So it is coming from neural innergen, means it is seen mainly during administration of general or spinal anesthesia. So by giving the spinal or general anesthesia, it leads to inhibition of sympathetic nervous system. So you can understand when sympathetic nervous system is inhibited, it leads to decrease in vascular resistant and also leading to vasodilation, decreased blood return to heart, thereby finally it is affecting the decrease in a cardiac output. So because of the giving spinal anesthesia or general anesthesia, there is decrease in cardiac output. So this may lead to neurogenic shock. And next coming to cardiogenic, in the name itself you can see it is coming from heart itself. So something problem in the heart leading to decrease in cardiac output, that's it. So inherent cardiac disease leading to decrease in cardiac output. And next let us see the anaphylactic and septic shock. So anaphylactic shock is mainly created by histamines. So what histamine done? It increase the permeability of fluid. So because of increase in capillary permeability, lot of fluid go into extracellular fluid. So what happens, intracellular fluid decreases, that is loss of fluids. So this in turn of course decrease the cardiac output because the blood volume is decreased now. And histamines mainly create the vasodilation. So this vasodilation lead to decrease in cardiac output. So whenever vessels are dilated, cardiac output is decreased because of slow blood flow. And septic shock. So septic shock is a characteristic of bacterial infection. So mainly in bacterial infections you can see septic shock. So patient presents with fever of course and increased body temperature. Whenever the body temperature increases, even the blood flow increase. So this lead to further increase in cardiac output. So I think you may wonder now, till now we have discussed 5 types of shocks. Till now we have seen 5 types of shock, but among all this shock you have seen the septic shock. The septic shock is the only one where the cardiac output is increased, but in all other conditions if you see the cardiac output is decreased. So this is the only shock like state where the characteristics is that increase in cardiac output. So let us see some MCQs and end our cardiac physiology revision. So first one is cardiac index. We know already it is the ratio of cardiac output divided by total surface area, and cardiac output decreases during in changing of position, like standing from lying position, like that. And which one is false? When subject assumes standing position from supine position. So whenever is in supine and like laying down and standing, then what happens? Here they are saying heart rate decreases. This is false because heart rate increases. So what are the factors which are increased? Mainly heart rate is increased and also total peripheral resistance is increased, but all other factors are decreased. So this is the false statement. Heart rate increases during laying from supine position to standing position. So this is all about our cardiac physiology complete revision.